Funding for Lawmakers comes from
the University of West Georgia in Carrollton, ensuring a better life for Georgians in the 21st century. More than 100 programs of study prepare students for successful careers in the critical professions of education and nursing, as well as business and the liberal arts. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of Georgia's business community, over 4,000 members strong, working with lawmakers for over 90 years to make sure that our state remains a place where companies thrive.
And by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.
Coming up on Lawmakers, school board governance legislation passes the Senate. Governor Sonny Perdue speaks to state agency heads about the use of federal stimulus dollars. And our leadership series of interviews continues with House Democratic Caucus Chair Calvin Smyre. Those stories and more are coming up next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers. Here are your anchors, Nwandi Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening, everyone. Also on tonight's broadcast, the House passes 2 education measures. One's aimed at improving student physical fitness, the other at decreasing the high school dropout rate.
And today was the 11th annual Disability Day at the Capitol. But first, our top story tonight, the Senate votes to approve new school board governance measures. Legislative reaction to last year's Clayton County School Board problems continued in the Senate today with the passage of SB 84. This bill, which is an initiative from Governor Perdue, would address a number of concerns brought up by the Commission for School Board Excellence, ranging from conflict of interest, nepotism, the size of local school boards, and board member qualifications. SB 84 sponsor Bill Heath explains one provision within the bill questioned by Senator Vincent Fort, which addresses the governor's powers of appointment.
Do you have any concerns about whether or not it's proper or not for a governor who removes a school board to sit in judgment in a hearing with that school board, with those school board members?
This is a last resort step. This is something that would take place presumably when the board has failed. And as I said, the governor could reappoint one of those, and I think it's probably appropriate.
We don't need to be in the executive department, and he doesn't need to appoint everybody in the state. He's got a list of hundreds of appointees that we ratify every year. We gave him the Public Defenders Council last year and made it the governor appointing them. And this year made an advisory board. We're fixing to, I think, let him start choosing what roads he want to pave. And I'm afraid before it's over, we're going to let him choose the lottery members and maybe who wins. I don't know. But I think it's going a little too far, and I think there ought to be a buffer there.
I can tell you that the governor struggled with that school board issue. He did not like to have to take the actions that was taken then. He doesn't want to be there again. That's the reason that the provision's in there for the school board to police themselves. So this is not in any way to be construed as some kind of power grab. This is to ensure that the children of the state of Georgia get a good education.
Now, 3 amendments to the bill were offered, 2 of which were voted down in line with a request from Senator Heath. Again, SB 84 passed by a vote of 35-14 and now goes over to the House.
Well, Governor Perdue is back in Georgia today after his trip to the nation's capital. The governor's first order of business, a meeting with the heads of the state's various agencies with a report on how President Obama's stimulus package will affect Georgia. Lawmakers Valarie Edwards is now joining us, and she's got more about that. Valarie.
In Nwandi, if there's one common theme running through the governor's comments today, a theme echoed by the heads of the OPB and the SOA, it is this: department heads must be diligent, there will be accountability, and there must be transparency. Let's begin first with the governor's comments.
We're going to do our due diligence as a state. For every federal dollar that we think will benefit Georgians long-term, short-term, and long-term, we're going to go after it. For those that cost us more than it's worth, we'll probably not.
And this is born out of the fear I think that many of us have and have seen before, where awesome amounts of dollars are flooded into a state or a community or a city, be it disaster or otherwise, and with the urgency to spend it very quickly, and it's not all well spent. I want us, each and every one of us, and the state as a whole, to be able to look everyone in the eye and be able to commit to people that we have not wasted a cent of this money that's here to help our citizens and our state in that regard.
Now, earlier this year, the head of the governor's Office of Planning and Budget contacted each of the state's 149 agency heads. Debbie Dugolansky asked each to name a point person, someone responsible for meeting President Obama's transparency in government mandate.
We are in the midst of some very rigorous analysis. Not only do we have to review your action plans, we have to review your action plans in the context of the Recovery Act. So we have to make sure that your action plans fall within the guidelines of the statutory requirements of the Recovery Act. And we also have to make sure that the action plans are they meet the federal rules and guidelines as set forth by federal agencies.
Finally, the man charged with setting up the federal government's Transparency and Accountability Board was formerly Inspector General for the Interior Department. Celeste Osborne, Chief Financial Officer for the state's Accountability Office, tells what they'll be looking for.
The board is specifically charged with 3 different responsibilities, and that first responsibility is ensuring that reporting meets all applicable standards. Now, most of these are common sense, but just remember this is what they're going to be focusing on. Verifying compliance with competitive requirements, an important one, and investigating spending to identify poor contract management, keywords, poor contract management, and particularly as it relates to fraud and waste.
Now, earlier this week, Governor Perdue said he may turn down some of that stimulus money because it might not be in the state's long-term interest to accept it. More than $6 billion is headed to Georgia. Some of that money will be used to bridge the Medicare funding gap.
All right. Thank you very much, Valerie.
Legislation which targets those involved in email fraud passed the Senate today. Senator Cecil Staton sponsors SB 59, which provides criminal and civil penalties for misleading headers and falsifying information within the electronic mail.
This bill comes as a result of our continuing to look at the situation in our state and our code with respect to spam email. Now, to make sure you understand, I'm not talking about the spam that my father used to keep in his tackle box when we went fishing, along with some saltine crackers in case we get hungry. But rather, we're dealing with the kind of email that come into our computers every day. And unfortunately, those, with the development of these technologies, there are criminals, and I use the word deliberately, who attempt to use our email to defraud us. And they are ever more clever, and there's software now available to them that makes this easier. This bill simply is attempting to deal with this situation, to give us something in the Georgia code so that if, in fact, someone in Georgia is doing this or someone in Georgia is harmed, we'll have some appropriate remedies for law enforcement to use in trying to attempt to go after these people who are trying to defraud our citizens by the use of spam email.
Now, SB 59 passed without dissenting vote and now goes over to the House along with SB 23, which sparked a little more debate on the floor. The original intent of this bill, sponsored by Senator Lee Hawkins, brings the evidence of not wearing a seatbelt into lawsuits. However, a committee substitute added in the Senate Judiciary Committee struck pickup trucks used for agricultural purposes off the bill. Senator Hawkins' floor amendment today puts them back on, basically overriding the committee substitute. Senate Judiciary Committee Vice Chairman Seth Harp was not pleased and discussed his reasons with Senator Ralph Hudgens.
The original intent of this bill was to consider into evidence the neglect of wearing a seatbelt, and that which makes sense. I mean, in the court system in the state of Georgia, ball tires are presented as evidence, and it just seems only fitting that this would also be presented in evidence. You know, folks make a decision whether to wear a seatbelt or not, and it is a responsibility. In committee, this bill was substituted very cleverly, and the essence of the bill was struck out.
If a committee doesn't like a bill, do you think that the proper thing for the committee to do is to vote it down and not pass it out? Or do you think the proper thing is to change the entire intent of the bill and send it forward without notifying the author?
Senator, I think the purpose of the bill was to ensure safety in Georgia and to improve safety in Georgia, and the committee saw fit to improve the bill, which is what I think committees in this body are supposed to do. Instead, what we have here is attempting to subvert what the committee voted on, a majority of the committee voted on, and passed.
Now, Senator Hawkins' amendment did pass, and SB 23's final vote was 39-12, so it goes to the House.
The House today adopted 2 education measures. One, bill sponsors say will improve student physical fitness. The second, the Move On When Ready Act, is aimed at decreasing the high school dropout rate. Representative Brooks Coleman told the House that House Bill 229 is much different from the SHAPE Act, a physical fitness measure that failed to pass last year.
This is not the body mass bill. If you remember this time last year, I stood in this well and I spoke against and helped defeat that bill that we had talking about doing body mass measurement. I did not think it was good to have to do that. So in this bill, you'll see that it says that these assessments will be done during a physical education class taught by a certificated or certified physical education instructor.
Representative Jeff May opposed the measure as obtrusive.
While there are, some good provisions here, I don't think it's the government's job to determine the BMI of my child or anyone's child. That is not the role of government.
HB 229 passed 116 to 42. Representative Jan Jones sponsors HB 149, allowing high school juniors and seniors to leave their traditional campuses to attend a college or university or a technical school. Representative Jones said the measure would keep students from dropping out. She was questioned about whether it would divert money from public schools.
This amount, their QBE funding, will not fully pay for all of the expenses to attend most colleges in Georgia. But to participate, the public or private college has to agree that that payment will be accepted as payment in full. The reason only $200 is left behind is because, unlike in regular dual enrollment, no services will be supplied by the high school, the base high school, other than keeping up with their records and that sort of thing, because all their needs will be met at the higher education institution.
So we don't contemplate that these students will actually continue to take classes at their high school?
They will not. That would be the traditional dual enrollment.
HB 149 passed 154 to 6. Now both education measures move to the Senate. In other education news, when legislation providing vouchers for special needs students passed last session, opponents to that measure thought that the move could open the door for more taxpayer-funded voucher programs. Today, a universal voucher bill passed out of committee, and lawmakers Emily Banks joins us with that story. Emily.
And Wendy, there were hours of testimony today in the Senate Education and Youth Committee. Senate Bill 90 was the hot topic as it relates to taxpayers funding school vouchers for students attending a school outside of their district. Senate Bill 90 would allow parents to choose where their children go to school. Jewel Faison, the founder of a private school, spoke in favor of the bill today, while Elisa Hammond from the ACLU spoke against it.
We have a responsibility to make choice available not just for those who can afford choice, but for those who can't. Don't be fooled by the rhetoric that only a select few citizens will take advantage of this opportunity.
SB 90 does not require that private schools take children. It does prevent private schools from discriminating on students based on race, color, or national origin. However, there's nothing that prevents the private schools from discriminating on the basis of gender, on the basis of religion, on the basis of economic background, on the basis of disability, learning, or otherwise.
Senate Bill 90 received a do-pass recommendation in a 6-4 vote.
Thanks so much for your report.
The Transforming Transportation Investment Act passed out of the Senate Transportation Committee today. Senate Bill 200, sponsored by Senate President Pro Tem Tommy Williams, would abolish the State Road and Tollway Authority, establish a new State Transportation Authority, and restructure the funding and powers of the Department of Transportation. Now, Senator Valencia C. and Senator Doug Stoner voiced their concern that the committee needed more time to make an informed decision on the bill, but it was still able to pass by substitute. We will have more from the committee meeting tomorrow on Lawmakers.
Legislation that would add hundreds of dollars to the cost of a speeding ticket passed out of House Committee today. Lawmakers Minu Hosseini is live at the Capitol with more. Minu.
And Wandy, legislation was backed by Governor Sonny Perdue, and it's being referred to as the super speeder bill. The measure takes aim at drivers who habitually drive in excess of 85 miles per hour. Bill sponsor Jim Cole explains the intent of the legislation.
But what Governor Perdue wanted to do by simply saying that if you're caught doing 85 on a 4-lane or 75 on a 2, he wanted a very simple marketing message that we could market across Georgia to let people know that Georgia is serious about speeding.
And although supporters of the bill anticipate that $20 million in revenue will be generated from the super speeder legislation and that those funds would be directed to the state's trauma care network, Representative Cole said that increasing trauma care funding is not the bill's main goal.
House Bill 160, as we all know, is referred to as the super speeder legislation that's been introduced by Governor Perdue. And I will not deny that this bill does generate revenue. However, that revenue is for a good purpose, which is a level 1 trauma center of care network. Now, that will not fund the whole network. It'll only be a piece of the puzzle. We would like to see 10 years from now this bill generate no money. Because you know what? I know that won't happen, but that means people aren't speeding. And when people aren't speeding, there's less traumatic accidents. So we view this bill as a trauma prevention as much as it is a trauma funding.
Now, House Bill 160 cleared its first legislative hurdle today when it was approved by the House Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee and now moves to the House Rules. Reporting live, I'm Minu Hosseini for Lawmakers.
Okay, thanks for that report, Minu. Well, lawmakers made strides to protect borrowers from subprime loans today. Lawmakers Brittany Evans has the details.
This afternoon, the Senate Banking and Financial Institutions Committee gave a due pass to 2 bills related to the current housing crisis. SB 141 would allow renters to remain in foreclosed homes up to 60 days after foreclosure. That passed by substitute without dissenting vote. SB 57, or the Georgia Fair Lending Act, was also successful. The bill aims to prevent banks from selling loans to people who clearly cannot afford them. Many critics had argued for the addition of assignee liability. That would have allowed borrowers to be able to sue any subsequent buyer of the subprime loan. The committee chair and SB 57 sponsor, Senator Bill Hamrick, explained why he didn't think assignee liability fit into the bill.
If assignee liability is going to apply to Georgia, it needs to apply to every state, and therefore it needs to be done at the federal level.
Senator Steve Thompson submitted a substitute today which failed that included assignee liability.
When somebody sells these loans, you can't sue or get your money back from the person who holds the paper currently. And it's complex, but it's wrong. And it was closer than I thought on the vote. I was proud of the Banking Committee for voting independently and thinking it through, but we were 1 vote short.
SB 57, with Senator Hamrick's substitute, was given a due pass, and now it and SB 141 moved to the Senate Rules Committee. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Brittany Evans.
Two House resolutions aimed at labor unions and sponsored by Representative John Lunsford passed the House Industrial Relations Committee yesterday. H.R. 22 aims to protect the secret ballots when voting on union organizations. Representative Lunsford explains.
The purpose behind the bill, for the members so they'll understand, is not to say that this is pro-union or anti-union, but it is pro-employee. And by doing a secret ballot, we prohibit management or labor from unduly influencing the employees to vote one way or the other.
The committee also passed H.R. 23, which urges the Georgia General Assembly to reject the attempt by the U.S. Congress to replace the secret ballot. Representative Lunsford discussed how public voting could affect Georgia workers.
We all know as elected officials there are repercussions for our votes down here in the House chamber and in the Senate chamber, as well as it should be because we've run for public office. But I don't believe that there should be punishment or repercussions for an employee who's doing his job absolutely, or her job wonderfully, which has nothing to do with job performance, based on how they do or do not vote for a union to be instilled in their company. That has no impact on that person's job. They've done their job.
H.R. 23 ended with a split vote, the chairman placing the deciding vote to pass that legislation. Both resolutions will now move to House rules. A similar Senate resolution designed to protect union members' secret ballots is also making its way through the legislative process. Senate Resolution 108, sponsored by Senator Eric Johnson, passed out of the Senate Insurance and Labor Committee yesterday by a vote of 7-2. It moves to Senate rules. Well, our leadership interview series continues today with House Democratic Caucus Chair Calvin Smyre. Representative Smyre traveled to Washington yesterday to attend President Obama's address to the joint session of Congress, and I began by asking him for his impressions of the president's economic stimulus package.
With the budget situation that we have and the economy the way it is, it couldn't come at a better time because it allows us now to not to have to cut as deep as we possibly would have had to cut to balance the budget. So with that in mind, it's very timely that the economic stimulus is coming as it is.
Well, now, Southern governors, Republicans, including our own Governor Sonny Perdue here in Georgia, are criticizing this plan, saying the president's plan is very heavy on spending, light on tax cuts. How do you respond to those charges?
Well, I've met with our governor, and it was a very pleasant conversation. When I was in Washington sitting with, at that time, the transition team to the president-elect, the notion was that this money will be provided to the states to help to fulfill the budget crisis that 46 of our 50 states have a budget deficit, Georgia included, with some 2.2 billion. This depends on which day you're talking to the budget writers. So the governor was very, very receptive. At that time, I know there's some issues that he has some concern with, such as the unemployment insurance and some of the areas that deal with unemployment insurance and unemployment compensation. Overall, and when it comes to the Medicaid, when it comes to education, when it comes to other issues that relate itself to the stabilization in the stimulus package, we've not been far off on the same from the same page. We've had some dialogue, and we're going to continue to have the dialogue. I think when it comes to budget, when it comes to fulfilling our responsibility, and I don't want to abdicate that responsibility, but when it comes to balancing the budget, when it comes to people suffering and people having a lot of pain now, it's up to us to rise above our differences in a political, bipartisan way and come to grips with what I consider one of the biggest crises I've seen in my years of serving in the state legislature.
When it comes to stimulus here in Georgia, House Republicans have introduced a number of measures giving some corporate tax breaks in order to stimulate job creation in the state. I'm wondering whether the House Democratic Caucus, is that something that you can get on board with, or are there other ideas out there in terms of stimulating the growth here in Georgia? We have had some proposals that we've advocated, such as a point of sale, which we think will increase the amount of money that's available in reference to our sales tax. The Department of Revenue is saying there's over $1 billion that's uncollected in sales tax revenue that we're not collecting. So we think that at the local level, providing them with the resources and with the appropriate revenue agents, there's $1.6 billion that is uncollected. So therefore, we have sales tax funds that are left on the table that we have not collected yet. So we need to work together, and that's one of the proposals that we have advanced this legislative session. And hopefully there's a hearing soon on it, and we would hope that we could, that Republicans and Democrats alike could come to the table and advocate that. On the other matter, as it relates to tax breaks and tax cuts, we think those are incentives to bring business to our state. And anytime we have a prospect, and our Department of Economic Development is looking for prospects, I think it's up to us to provide the necessary incentives to make sure that the rail is available, water is available, infrastructure is available. So with that in mind, I think we're willing to work
across the aisle when it comes to issues of that nature. Businesses create jobs. Jobs create quality of life. So with that in mind, the more jobs we create, the better quality of life we have in the state of Georgia for the citizens that we represent.
Very good. Well, I appreciate your time this afternoon. That's House Democratic Caucus Chair Calvin Smyre. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great being here.
1,500 people crowded the streets in front of the Capitol to hear Atlanta radio personality Frank Ski, Eric Jacobson from the Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities, and Senator Nan Orrock, to name a few. They all came out in support of the 11th Annual Disability Day. Lawmakers Andrea Hummel-Shelton filed this report.
I want to welcome you all to the 11th Annual Disability Day at the Capitol. Today, we hope that all of us can celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Olmstead decision.
The Olmstead decision was a U.S. Supreme Court decision that basically said that the Americans with Disabilities Act resulted in people not being in institutions. They said it was actually discrimination to have somebody living in an institution if they wanted to leave that institution. That decision actually originated from here in Georgia. Ms. Curtis and Elaine Wilson sued the state of Georgia to be let out of an institution and live in a community.
We're going to work this year to move forward on making new homes accessible in Georgia. Let's change the culture of home building. Let's take this key and unlock those doors that have blocked people.
Is that there are almost 7,000 people with developmental disabilities eligible for services and can't get those services. Those are services that keep them out of institutions, allow them to go to work. The most important thing right now is for people to understand that, call their legislators and let them know that we need to unlock the waiting list and to provide the funds that are important.
Well, there was an unusual visitor in the halls of the Capitol today, a grizzly bear. Well, actually, it was the Georgia Gwinnett College mascot, the newest college in the university system. Georgia Gwinnett College is the nation's first four-year public college created in the 21st century, opening its doors in 2006. Georgia Gwinnett College has 4 degree programs and 1,700 students enrolled. The Grizzly made his appearance because today was the first annual Gwinnett County Day at the Capitol. It's funny, I don't remember seeing the grizzly bear. I was there today. Well, coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, the adjusted FY09 budget and the controversial Georgia Nuclear Energy Financing Act are scheduled for debate in the House. We'll have coverage of those stories and all the latest Capitol news tomorrow night on Lawmakers at 7. And if you have missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. on GPB or 7 a.m. on GPB Knowledge. You can also keep up with all of the action under the Gold Dome Daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Georgia Gazette. Well, coming up next on GPB Television, Georgia Traveler. Tonight's high-flying episode is navigating Northwest Georgia. Georgia Traveler is next here on GPB Television.
With no grizzly bears. Well, that's our broadcast for this 23rd legislative day of the 2009 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Inwandi Lawson.
And I'm David Zelski. Join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. for Lawmakers. Good night.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.